Good morning, everybody. I am Kelly Friend from TPMA, the Senior Workforce Education Manager here. And I would like to thank you all for joining us. Today, we're going to discuss purpose after service, connecting veterans with careers that matter. I would like to say that TPMA is a national consulting firm, and we are really interested in what our veterans have to say today. So I am ready to enjoy this conversation. Would you each take a moment and introduce yourself? Tom, I called you out on your early morning, so here you go.
Yeah, see, and I set the bar high saying that I was going to give you the best that I had today. So yeah, Tom McKenzie, retired from the Marine Corps in 2022 after about 20 years in the Marine Corps. Served as a career recruiter. Primarily, served as a career recruiter for about the last 15 and a half years of my life. Transitioned out of the military and had the opportunity to, work alongside a skill bridge program and be part of building something that was absolutely amazing. And during that time frame, had the opportunity to just really help about 10,000 service members transition out of the military, get to understand their stories, understanding a bit of the problem sets that most veterans face. And that really sparked an interest in trying to do more and affect people beyond that skill bridge program, kind of taking this skill set and trying to make it easier for those in the civilian workforce and corporate partners to understand the challenges that exist and really help build meaningful and viable pathways so that we can really help the true stakeholders in the situation, which are those that have served this country and those that have done it selflessly, have better integrations back into life. So happy to be here, Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And absolutely. And you have done all of those things. So knowing you for some time now, it is incredible the work that you do with veterans, civilians, and kind of just spreading information and connectivity. So you are a network within yourself, and you always say yes. I have yet to hear you say no. So, Bill, do you mind taking over here for a second and talking about your work and who you are? And welcome back again. So thank you. Yeah, welcome back. Thank you for saying yes again. So
yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. I love the work you're doing. I'm Bill Kiefer. I am a transition career coach. I started my entrepreneurial venture doing this work in 2018 after having spent 22 years as a corporate HR and talent management leader in global Fortune 500s. I got to that after having a horrible transition from the military. I had spent nearly 12 years as an Army officer. And I found out, in hindsight, I describe it as my life journey and my career journey coming to a crossroads. I went through a divorce. So anyway, great career. Army Light Infantry Divisions, Central America in the 80s, Somalia in the 90s, did all that stuff. I'm an author. I've written 2 transition books, Military Career Transition Insights from the Employer Side of the Desk, blatant advertising, and then Veteran Career Journey, which came out in 2023. The first one was a bestseller on Amazon, quite frankly. I have been doing this work informally ever since I got out, but I do this full-time. 2-time entrepreneur. I have a full-time for-profit advisory firm that I run, and I have a nonprofit named after my second book, Veteran Career Journey. Our mission is to close the culture gap that stands between employers and veterans. As a transitioning veteran that got out and had no idea what to do or how to do it, I've seen that difficult travel. And then as a hiring manager and talent management executive, I saw how hard it is for employers to effectively engage with veterans. So the new unique value proposition that I offer is the employer insights to veteran hiring and employment. I also do work with the Honor Foundation. I do some work with SODIF. I do work with Hiring Our Heroes. Through the Honor Foundation, I wrote and deliver their Business 101 program. And I've trained nearly 1,600 special operators in the basics of business and life and success in the civilian commercial world.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. I always love hearing um, the work that you have done and the impact that you have given over all of these years. So
Thank
every
you.
time there's always so much to learn. So I'm looking forward to asking new questions about transition and careers today to you and Tom and now moving on to Roy. Roy, you wanna and Roy, welcome back.
No,
You
thank you.
you made an impact on our last webinar. So happy to see your face again.
Yeah,
Feel free.
glad to be here. Roy Martin, retired from the Marine Corps after 20 years this past December. Started off as infantry, moved to artillery, became an instructor, did some recruiting, became a foreign security force advisor, embedded with foreign militaries to teach them how to do what we do so we don't have to go and insert ourselves where we don't want to be. And then I finished my time as a first sergeant at a reserve unit, making sure the reserve training schedule happens, such like that. Deployed a whole bunch of times, decided that this is my time to exit. Started looking at what do I want to do when I grow up. I discovered INVETS. INVETS is a unique transition service for the state of Indiana, where they try to find veterans not just in the state, but out of state to come to Indiana and work within the state. Uh, Use them to try to figure out what I wanted to do. Ended up working for them as a manager of outreach and partnership, working with the employers, finding out what did they need and how can we fill those needs with service members. It was a state-funded organization, got hit on the budget, got riffed, and since then, I've just been volunteering a whole lot in the community, trying to tackle needs for less fortunate children.
Thank you, Roy. Back in our previous webinar was, you know, veterans that continue to serve the community and how communities benefit from that. And what stood out is even through your riff in vets, you are still pouring into the community. Your time is, you know, valuable and you are still providing a great service to your community. And I hope everybody can see you today. So if you are hiring, contact Roy. Like we have a veteran in transition right now. So Andrew, I'm excited to invite you to this webinar. Thank you for joining us. I know you are a man on the go. So, Andrew, do you mind introducing yourself, talking a little bit about like where you are right now? Because, you know, we're all dressed up a little, but you're in the mix of something.
Yes. So hopefully it's not echoing too bad in here.
No, you're good.
My name is Andrew Freeman for Barnhart Training and Rigging. I'm currently in the middle of working some trailers and truck showed up. Had some complications with the computer system. It's not allowing me in. So I'm in the front lobby in a rolling chair holding my phone, trying to be a part of this. So yeah, I apologize for my attire, but yes,
No,
I'm in
no,
it
there's
today.
no apologies. This is exactly why why we're having this discussion. You're a veteran that landed in a career that's meaningful to our community. So talk to me a little bit about your service.
So I joined the Marine Corps in January of 2003. I signed up originally as a reservist. I wasn't really sure that I wanted to go full time. My brother was, and I joined a reserve unit. Well, I guess first I went boot camp, came home, you know, you do your MCT. Then I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for my job school as a heavy equipment operator. When I returned, I was working on active duty and to a primary marksmanship instructor school in like November of 2003. I volunteered to go with a bridge company from Folsom, Pennsylvania to Iraq. So I deployed with them through 2004. I returned back home and I tried to go on some other deployments and my unit was slotted to deploy. So I ended up going with my unit in 2006 and 2007 with Bridge Company Bravo. Um, in between, I mean, I went to multiple schools. I've been, multiple other countries to do humanitarian missions, building hospitals. I went to martial arts instructor school, so I learned how to train other Marines. They would pull me from my company for their annual training to train them on the rifle ranges and in the Marine Corps martial arts program. I would go to these Quantico, Virginia for spin ups, like deploying Marines. They do their pre-deployment training at this place called Camp Upshur, and they would send me out there for a couple weeks at a time, training thousands of Marines that are coming in and out, getting ready to deploy. I did that probably 3 or 4 times. And on my way to Afghanistan, was doing our pre-mob training in 29 Palms at Camp Wilson, and my son was born 5 weeks early. I came home off the deployment, and I spent the next 2.5 years on active duty, running the maintenance shop at our unit. There was a mix-up, something or other. They didn't have somebody there for quite a while, so they asked me if I wanted to stay on, and I did for the next 2.5 years till I got out in 2016. So I transitioned from being on active duty straight into a maintenance position at AM General for 8 years. And thanks to COVID, everybody restructured, and I had to change my whole job setup. Was on unemployment, went to through CDL school that they offered. I went to school, got a job for a year driving, started doing hazmat work until I landed the opportunity here at Barnhart. And I'm the maintenance manager here. I've been here for about 1.5 years, and hopefully within the next month or so, they'll have a contract signed with the local 150, and I'll be moving into the operators union. So that's my story.
Andrew, I think you're more than that story, but I think
I
you bring a
appreciate
lot to, yeah, I think you bring a lot to um the community that is in the workforce that just goes unseen, right? This is where veterans land, and how can a community help them succeed in the way that they should, and also bring value to that transition. This question is actually for Roy and Andrew. Um, was there a moment in your transition where something clicked or you had to pivot? And I think we touched on this a little bit. But Roy, Andrew, where was it in that transition? Or is it could it be happening now, or kind of talk to me about that?
I knew I was going to get out. It shouldn't come to any sort of surprise like Christmas or birthdays. They happen, plan for it. And in my planning, I was looking at trying to get into environmental or agriculture consulting. And I was having a whole bunch of informational interviews with folks in the field. And then I realized that I needed to be open to broader opportunities. And that's where I found InVets, did workforce development, found out that I really enjoyed that. And then, like you mentioned, kind of in it right now, not necessarily looking to pivot, but definitely open to other opportunities. And not being set on one thing is pretty big for me.
Yeah. Um, Andrew, where was did you have to pivot? It sounded like you had to pivot after you went on a couple deployments and continued to come back. Was there a moment there?
So when I got off the deployment, um, there was I got what they call an adverse sit rep, and they looked at it as a way because I originally volunteered to go, and even though there was family issues and medical issues, didn't really care, and I got passed over for staff sergeant, and at that time we weren't really at war anymore, so they say. So things that they looked at weren't combat fitness reports, people that deployed. They were looking for the guy that went to, sergeant's course and, book stuff and they just, I got passed over. At that point, I knew that it's like I was ready to hang up my hat. Like, I want to leave the Marine Corps with a good taste in my mouth with the guys. Our unit was they were transferring from a 60SB to CLB 25. So all the guys that I trained and deployed with, they all transitioned to either other services or out of our unit. And it was just, everything just felt like that time to go. And I was offered, extension and things to stay. And I was like, I appreciate it. I'm on my way out. And I ended up, it was a good position at AM General for a while. And it just, every time things like I was really getting my feet in, getting ready to start school. I was going to go to school to be, I wanted to go for engineering, get my engineering degree. And I literally had everything that I was going to need for like hands-on application at that facility. And then COVID happened, shut everything down. I lost my job. It was like I had to start all over. In my life, I always wanted to be a truck driver, but it's not really the way that I wanted it to land, where I had to go through unemployment. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And an opportunity opened. At that point, after COVID, it was like all these containers out in the ocean. Now, truck driving wasn't looked at as you weren't intelligent and you just became a truck driver. It was like, we need you. So now my position became like a sawed off job, increase in pay. And it was looked at like, wow, those guys are really working hard. They're not just the nobodies that couldn't make it in school. And where I am here, it's so never the same thing every day. Going uh,
All right, Andrew, I think we're losing you right there. So Andrew,
I froze.
yeah, you did. So you might want to go ahead and sh hold that thought, right? And let's try to conserve your bandwidth, or maybe get you back on here in a second. But Tom, Bill, hearing from Roy and Andrew and also your experiences, what are the turning points that tend to shape veteran transitions, and what makes the difference between struggle and momentum?
I think there's really three key pivot points, if you will, or turning points in a veteran's transition. It's quite simply before, during, and after transition. One of the struggles before transition is realizing that the uniform's gonna come off. Okay, and I think Roy, you talked about that. From day one, at some point, you may not know when, that uniform's gonna come off. So I suggest people start thinking about what happens after the uniform right away. Okay, now most people don't do that because you're focused on learning and doing the great things, being great in the job you're in and all that. But the earlier you can think about what happens after the world or after the uniform out in the real world, the more efficient, effective your transition will be. Momentum, I think, comes from that's a dual focus, right? Do a great job in uniform, but constantly take a moment, maybe not constantly, recurringly, frequently, regularly, take time to go, who am I? What am I bringing to the party? And what is success going to look like? Okay, so we got Marine Corps folks, you guys are all expert shooters. My suggestion is you probably can't hit a target you haven't identified. Take the time along the way to start figuring out what that range card looks like, what your list of targets might be. And as you get closer, prioritize your targets for what good might look like. During transition, there's two key things: continuing to get prepared and getting known. Those are two different things. Okay, a lot of folks in uniform, I do a lot of work in the special operations community, but generally throughout the conventional forces too, people are a little averse to social media, right? They don't want to be putting out their information. You need to be on LinkedIn. You need to be connecting with people. You need to get good at telling your story in a way that lands well on the listener's ears. Okay. Those are all important things to do, right? And then finally for the after transition, I liken this period to a parachute jump. I went to jump school 41 years ago. Yes, I'm far older than I look. But at some point, you got to train well, you got to understand the equipment, you got to jump well, you got to land well. At some point, you're not jumping anymore. That's transition. At some point, you're in the drop zone. And now you got to take actions on the objective. Far too many people that do prepare for transition don't go to that next step and think about, oh crap, what do I do once I actually land? So, a long answer. Thomas, hope I didn't take too much of your time. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
I mean, all great points there. And what I'd really say that it comes down to, in my opinion, is that service members continue to perpetuate the fallacies. And what I mean by that specifically, because I know that Will and Roy were also recruiters. From day one, when we meet these young kids that are thinking about joining, somewhere in the pitch, there's this moment where we talk to these kids and we tell them, like, listen, stud, when you join X branch of service, let me tell you all the great things that are going to happen. You're going to gain a skill set. You're going to gain leadership. We're going to teach you how to become this great leader and give you more and more responsibility. And after your time is up, let me tell you what's going to happen. People are going to be jumping up and down to hire you because of your discipline and the things that you've gone through. And that's what the recruiter is telling these kids from the beginning. And that's what the senior staff non-commissioned officers are telling these younger service members. And that's what the officers are saying. And it's not because they're trying to tell lies deliberately or intentionally. It's just most of those people in uniform have never transitioned themselves, and they don't understand what the workforce really is. So it develops this fallacy where a lot of service members really do start to believe that them just leaving the service alone is going to be enough for them to assimilate into the civilian workforce. So that's one component of it. We have to stop teaching that fallacy, and we have to take the time to educate those that are still in uniform to kind of break that cycle and bring the reality to it. So that's one. Two, when you look at just kind of the current setup of the military forces overall, and we're recruiting a little bit better, the forces are starting to get a little bit stronger, but at the end of the day, we're fighting to retain talent within the DoD system in itself. And so a lot of commanders, a lot of senior staff non-commissioned officers are hesitant to give their people up early out of their contracts to participate in programs like SkillBridge. And so I could tell you this much from my time working within the SkillBridge program: when service members have a little bit of time to kind of think about who they are, identify where it is that they really want to be, get exposed to those opportunities, and then work on the things that Will has put out there, that is where true success comes, because we're giving people the time to assimilate correctly. And what I'd say for everybody that's on this webinar on the employer side, like, you want to understand what a transitioning service member is going through. Let me kind of put it to you this way: what the general outcome is for those that leave uniform. Yes, the uniform's coming off. Yes, you should prepare. You think you should prepare. But the reality is there's not a whole lot of time. So imagine being in your civilian job right now, knowing that in 12 months, you're not going to be working for that company anymore, right? That paycheck is going to be gone. But the reality is you're going to be stuck there in that civilian job, and you don't have a choice, and you have to show up every single day. And you don't necessarily have the time to go out there and search for another one. On top of that, we're gonna work you till about the last 30 days that you have on this contract with us, and then we're gonna say thank you for your service. We'll see you later. Here's your DD-214 saying that you've been discharged, and your gold watch of a GI Bill, and now you've got to relocate the family. And now you've got to figure out where you fit in the world. And now you have to figure out how you're going to pay the bills and get a resume together and go through the application process and become an expert in a field of, interviewing. It's something that you've never done before. And then we wonder why veterans have problems. We expect them to make these major life decisions and to make these major life transitions without affording them the proper amount of time to really understand the process. And unfortunately, On the DoD front, they're making strides to develop programs like, Will had mentioned, hiring our heroes, developing programs, developing remote skill bridge programs that are out there. That's really the key. That's really the key pathway. It's those programs being afforded to service members, and then companies seeking out those programs to lend support. Because at the end of the day, the best and the brightest of the DoD, in my opinion, are taking advantage, are afforded those opportunities and taking advantage, but it's a very small percentage. And so that's one way that can make a difference for a lot of veterans. If SkillBridge became something that was open to all, and everybody had the opportunity to participate, we'd see better integrated veterans back in the civilian workforce. We'd have happier former service members that would be advocates for our services just in general to recruit the front end. And then employers would be a whole lot happier because they could add injects to those companies to help develop that training process so that they're getting better integrated human beings that are committed, loyal, and have taken the most selfless journey that they could for themselves, whether it was 4 or 40 years. So that's what I think. That's the problem, in my opinion. The solution is there too, but I think it takes the collective, because not one entity has figured out how you treat the disease of transition instead of treating the symptoms of it.
Yeah, Kelly, do you mind if I add something to that for our employers and perhaps community leaders that are trying to engage better with them? Because Thomas brings up some really, really accurate and important points. 22 years an HR and talent management leader in the corporate world. My opinion is that despite the need for improvement, the work that DoD and all the branches do for transition is far better, far more robust than most civilian employers. I've seen, I don't know how many times where people were notified and 10 minutes later, sorry, your job no longer exists, and they're gone. There's zero transition. Here's the difference, though, with military veterans. 93% of the population never served in uniform. You have lived professionally at whatever kind of job you're in the world you're looking to go to next. You may not know what that job's going to be or where you're going to go. You may be shocked that you lost a job. Military veterans are leaving an entire culture that, while similar in some regards to the civilian work world, it's very different and very unique. One of the key differences is, my opinion, and anybody wants to push back, let me know, is the military, regardless of branch, does a pretty darn good job of saying, or this is your next gig, we're going to train you for that next gig, you're going to do it for about this long. There's some certainty and some preparation that gives some level of surety to our service members. Then they come to transition, and there's a lot of room to do things a lot better. But for the work people do individually, they are now exposed to a world full of opportunity that includes people and process and tools and techniques that they're not familiar with at all. And they're coming to employers going, I know I can add value. Please listen to me. So employers, community leaders that want to build those bridges with veterans and the veteran community, start by realizing highly capable people are coming from a different world. Let them converse with you and describe their capability so they can become credible enough to become a candidate for the openings you have.
Bill, thank you. Tom, I always learn something new when I hear all 4 of you talk. As a civilian and an advocate for veterans transition, and knowing that a better transition leads to better livelihood, longevity in life, and just a overwhelming sense of community and how our communities continue to be better for a veteran landing and participating in our employment and really getting into the past transition successfully. One of the things that you guys have kind of talked about is credentials, education. There's been a lot of talk these days in the DOL, DOE, SkillBridge, apprenticeships, but I really want to get into talking about this. Roy, you and I have had this discussion, and then Andrew, I'm going to pass it to you and talk to you a little bit about what credentials really mattered in your journey. And then we'll get back to Tom and Bill, because I think you guys got some things to say here, especially around the skill bridge and what's available. But Roy, talk to me a little bit about credentials that matter. And is we talked about your joint service transcript. So I'm not trying to pull out a little bit from our past conversations, but do you mind sharing
Yeah, for
that?
sure. So Kelly and I are working on this thing, kind of a pilot program in translating military education to something that would be recognized in the civilian ecosystem. I was going to be the pilot program guy. I have 176 college credits, both from service and some uh, actual college classes. And we're trying to see if there was a way for current universities to take that and see what they could do to help um, essentially credential that experience that would be recognized by uh, employers. It's a paper ceiling, if you would. If there's certain jobs that you cannot apply for without a degree, even though that individual may have run organizations very similar for many years. One of the other projects that I was working on with InVets is with credentialing. Indiana currently does not offer reciprocity for military law enforcement. Military law enforcement is federally accredited, and there are 22 other states in the nation that do offer some sort of reciprocity. They know that they've been trained X amount of hours in a service academy, multiple years of doing the job, and they would essentially be hired on and go through a shorter academy to learn state-specific laws and standard operating procedures. So out-of-state credentials or a federal credential doesn't always translate down, even though that credential is backed by many years of experience. So that's been a challenge, I think, in the work ecosystem.
Oh, and Roy, currently right now, you are still working out your education journey, trying to figure out military credit for prior learning, and where those credits are going to translate the best, right?
Correct.
And even though you have all of these credits, it's not still equaling a degree yet, right? So you still, if I hear you correctly, there's still on our civilian applications for civilian work, there's a bachelor degree requirement or some sort of requirement that's not translating quite well. And you're
Absolutely.
retired, right? Like,
And I'm retired. Yes.
and you're retired. Okay. I just want to make that really clear to our community members and our leaders on this call right now, and those that will view, that we haven't figured this out. This is a problem. Actually, I hope that people reach out to TPMA, myself, or the panelists here, and want to really take the torch and figure out how to do that. We need workforce. I can't think of a state that's not concerned about it on any state or federal level. So how are we going to fill how are we going to fill that pipeline? So yeah, sorry, Roy, I didn't mean to get on my own soapbox there. Sorry.
No, absolutely in line with it. Another anecdote, the sergeant major, so the most senior enlisted advisor for the state of Indiana's Marine Corps recruiting, phenomenal individual, 20 plus years. He's leading, hundreds of Marines geographically dispersed across 3 states, no college degree. He is also running into that barrier. So it's not just unique to myself, but many service members where they put the career first and they accrue training, and it's a hodgepodge of, yes, you get 3 credits here, 2 credits here. I can put them in a number for you, but there's still that paper ceiling for a lot of individuals who've done great work when given the opportunity to.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Roy. Andrew, you have a slew of credentials, right? For your field.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
And you have stacked them. How did that come to be? How did How did you get your CDL? That you talked about that alignment a little bit. So, and has it been valuable to you to earn those?
Yes. So my original job was, like I said, I went to Fort Underwood, Missouri for heavy equipment operator school, which subsequently for the Marine Corps is also where they do MP school, as Roy was talking about. We the licenses and stuff that I got for heavy equipment there transpired they do transpire to civilian areas on like models of whatever the equipment might be, the style. Um, Most of those were dirt pushing machines, so they don't really help me in my position where I'm at currently. The crane, when I went to journeyman school, which was a more advanced school for operator, that is what is helping me at this point, because moving into the operators union soon with the intent of becoming a crane operator, I have some experience there. On my first deployment, I operated a crane for several hundred hours. But my biggest was where you're talking about the CDL. I mean, as a kid, I drove a boat, like a truck and a trailer with a boat back and stuff in and out of the driveway, at a young age. Moving, 50-foot trailers or bigger, in with NVGs in the middle of Baghdad while you're getting shot in the middle of the night is a much different experience with heavy, oversized loads, things that you would normally need permits here. I mean, it was an incredible experience and learning, but I never got my CDL in the Marine Corps. I've logged thousands of hours or thousands of miles, hundreds of hours of driving, loading my own equipment, driving it to a job site, operating under much harsher conditions than here, loading it, going back, driving for 27 plus hours because of the wonderful IEDs that you would have to stop and wait for EOD to dismantle. And it's not like a normal job trip that you would have here in the civilian world. When I applied for my CDL and went through school, it was a much more direct for, the tractor and a trailer and on that aspect. But moving to the job that I originally wanted was driving for this company called Keenan Advantage Group, driving fuel for hazmat. Their stipulations, it didn't matter the experience that I had, 13 or more years. You had to have your CDL and drive for a year within the last 3 years. And they explained to me, like, you could have been driving a truck for 30 years and you took a 3-year hiatus and now you have to drive again. So I had to it was hard for me to find a job for the first 6 months or so straight out of school. I With my visitation of my son and my current living conditions, I could not go over the road. So I needed to find something local, and I managed to land a job transporting material for RV companies. And I knew a guy, he was a buddy of mine. I happened to fall into a space where they needed a position, and I was there for just over a year before I got laid off, and it was just enough time for me to transition into the hazmat driving. But the credentials that I had and those, like all the operating that I did, they didn't really help me at all. I mean, I had the experience, so it helped me pick up, but it didn't help me get the job any quicker. You got to have that paper license and the things here in the States. But had I not had the opportunity, um, honestly, I could have used my GI Bill to go, but the schools itself, I mean, it's like $7,000 or $8,000, out of pocket for a CDL school, or you get locked into a company that offers to pay for it, but then you got to stay there for 2 years. Um, it was incredible the grant, so to speak, through the unemployment office to get that. Um, I'm not the luckiest guy, but it seems like when I really need it, I'm not trying to preach God here, but I prayed on it a lot, and things started to kind of fall in place. And I tell you, when things like that, opportunities come, I work really hard. I managed to get some of the highest scores at the CDL school that come through there. Some of the tests that I got 100% on, the teachers were like, we see that maybe once every 3 or 4 months, somebody will come in here and get that. Marines and military personnel, when we put our minds to something, we dedicate our life to something, we don't stop until we achieve it. And it's incredible how there are some businesses out there that will look at the veterans like, hey, this guy, this, his attention to detail, his and that he can focus on things. It's kind of like a college degree when you most of that sometimes it doesn't even have to do with whatever field you're in. It's the fact that you stayed with it, you did this schooling, you succeeded. They want somebody they can depend on that's not going to give up when things get tough. And I think those aspects help me kind of where I am now. But then the transition to where I'm getting now, my credentials, I guess, as a operator has helped me substantially. I did want to touch on something that Roy said about the police department, though. My brother is a police officer here locally, and he was an MP in the Marine Corps. Was on the SRT team, which is kind of like the Marine Corps SWAT team, and it did not really help him at all when he got back here. Some departments almost looked at it like, you've been trained a certain way and we can't untrain you to now deal with civilians versus what you were dealing with before. And he had to go through every little thing. I mean, of course, his knowledge of weaponry and and shooting and things like that helped him once he got in there. But to get the job specifically, he was up. It didn't really help him. It almost hurt him in some aspects. So I'd be interested to and hope that what Roy's working with those types of things can help, because there's a lot of guys out there that I know for a fact the recruiters were like, yeah, you're a cop of the Marine Corps, you get out and you could be a cop anywhere. No, it's not the case. So
Appreciate that, Andrew. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that's Roy and Andrew. I think these are true things that are happening day to day in that transition that Tom and Bill keep on talking about. Tom, Bill, reactions to this, like what credentials, SkillBridge, DoD, what's working, what's not. We got some paper sealing things over here. It sounds like we have a lifetime of service and skills that are building within our service members, but they're just not translating. There's some preconceived notions of what that actually means. So feel free to weigh in for a little bit, and at about 11:50 we'll start taking questions and start closing up here.
Okay, really quick, number one, credentials. I think military folks are used to having a credential or a qualification. Yeah, we qualified this level with a weapon, we're surface warfare, air warfare qualified, we're airborne qualified. The real world doesn't necessarily depend on certifications and qualifications to the same degree in the same way. Some positions you got to be credentialed. If you're going to be a physician, you got to be credentialed. If you're going to do certain IT things, you got to be credentialed in those. It is what it is. But one of the fallacies that I see with people in career transition, service members in career transition, is they sometimes think that a certification is a golden ticket. I was talking to Roy, will appreciate this, a retiring first sergeant, happened to be Army, but God love the Marines. He thought he wanted to do HR work because he'd been a first sergeant, and that's kind of sort of in his wheelhouse. So he goes out and tries to get the SPHR SHRM certification. He starts learning it. He goes, I don't want to do this. And he didn't even try and find a free source to get it, because there are free sources to get a lot of these training certifications. So he sunk several $100s and a whole lot of time into a cert he's never gonna use. So first, for the veterans, don't just think a certification is a magic ticket. It's not. For the employers, I know there is a trend now to relook positions. Maybe it's happened at your business or not, and whether a degree is really required or not. Okay. If it's truly not required, fine. put it as something preferred, make it the tiebreaker in the hiring decision if necessary. Okay. And I did a lot of hiring. I understand if it's required, it's required. You don't want to put yourself into a potential discriminatory state when you're doing hiring things. Okay. But all good stuff Andrew and Roy brought up. Certifications are not the magic ticket. Some things that are working. DoD Skill Bridge overall, while it has its woes, is working. There's helmets to hard hats. If you're in the construction, building trades, they are good. They're not for everybody, but they are good. If you're an employer or a community leader looking to do something more with veterans and employment, get online, go to the Department of Labor, VETS, it's Veteran Employment Training Service, a lot of stuff there. Their mission is to help prepare veterans for civilian employment and to build partnerships with employers. It's a DOL Department of Labor level program. I'm sure there's a lot of red tape, but it might be worth looking through. Okay. And then there's a gazillion VSOs out there. My nonprofit helps prepare folks, not with certifications, but as doing the work we described. There's Vets to Industry, there's Vets to PM, University of Syracuse has IVMF, the O to O, Onward Opportunity. There's a lot of programs out there that can help folks identify which certification might be most interesting to them and comes at no cost to them, and that might be value added for you as an employer. And by the way, some of them even have the ability for you to list jobs on their sites if you become a partner with them. So anyway, long answer. Tom, over to you.
Well, you took everything away there, Will. But I'll leave one other nugget. First, I completely agree. No certification is going to be a golden ticket to employment. But moreover, the problem is the service member has to identify what it is that they really want to get into next. And that's hard to do while they're in uniform. And again, going back to that fallacy and the way that I'll describe it, service members are kind of like, if you've ever seen that movie, The Little Mermaid, they are the mermaid that's on the rock. And typically the person that they go to learn about the world for is that crazy little seagull from The Little Mermaid. And that crazy seagull is usually their senior enlisted or the officer that they report to. And that person is telling them how the world is. And the Little Mermaid realizes that, the bird's telling me I've got to comb my hair with this fork and everything's going to be okay. Well, that's not the right thing. And the way that we can really help service members, especially with this certification process, is by having those that are in the corporate workforce, serve as mentors to these service members to help kind of unlock the world and tell them how it really is. And so for our service members out there, I would just say, hey, if you haven't heard of the organization American Corporate Partners, that's something that you're going to want to look up very quickly. Because within 12 or 6 months of you transitioning out of the military, that nonprofit will partner you up with a mentor that will spend the next 12 months kind of unlocking the code and helping you dial in for yourself where your passion lies, at least in the workforce. And then for the employers that are on the call here, you want veteran talent. You want veteran talent because they represent people that are reliable employees that have leadership skills, that are committed to the cause and committed to your culture. They just want an opportunity, and they want you to take the time to understand what those skill sets are, what those gifts are. And I promise you that if you afford them that opportunity, the right candidates are going to be there. It's just going to take that you have your ears a bit open and you ask those questions to kind of understand where they are. But in my opinion, as a business owner, I want a veteran every single time over a recent college graduate in most cases, because they have proven that they can commit to something for a period of time and do it with a sense of selflessness and get behind a mission cause. I just feel like they make a better piece of, they make a better employee. They make better impacts on the company culture. You just have to give them the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. And I appreciate you all. Tom, Bill, Roy, Andrew, I want to thank you guys for all, the questions around, this discussion today and being so thoughtful and honest, and transparent on what needs to happen. We we do have a question in our Q&A, and it's open for any of you. What needs to happen so military experience translates more easily into credit or crosswalk into industry recognized credentials? Seems like it should be easier. I have to agree. It does seem like it should be easier. What, Tom, I think you're on an education route too, if I remember correctly. Like you were pursuing something. Roy, you were pursuing something. Right? Like, talk to me about it.
Yeah. So for Jessica out there, I would just put it to you this way: what, in my opinion, what should happen, or if employers want to make the difference, probably the easiest entry point outside of what William's already given would be, I would seek out some of these skill bridge opportunities, these skill bridge companies out there that are desperately looking for opportunities for the folks that they're training. And you being involved with those entities, you're going to be able to have a lot of injects on what happens within those programs to kind of help be that additional bridge between the skill bridge into your workforce pipeline, right? Into your talent pipeline. And so I think that's what it's going to take is our folks that are out there in the workforce wanting to get involved and wanting to kind of meet the people where they are so that we can work for better outcomes for both. And I see a lot of these programs popping up here. And the main reason that these programs are popping up is because the status quo just hasn't been enough. So I think it's people have to strap in and want to do the work. It's hard to cultivate talent towards pipelines or to cultivate those talent pipelines. It's even harder to kind of fix a military transition. But I think that with advocates that really do care about the bottom line, it's going to be everybody coming together to seek those better outcomes. And the injects will only help make it easier for military service members to find their next thing and for employers to find the right talent. We just have to kind of find a way to meet each other in the middle.
Roy, I kind of want to ask you a little bit real quick. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. You just ping-ponged me over to something with Roy, so I appreciate your thoughts there. Roy, you're on this,
Yep.
right? You're on this pathway. What can higher ed do? If you
One of the things I was thinking about with this is another thing I was working with were aircraft maintainers. They have a A&P certification, so it's airframe and power plant. You have service members who do it for 5 to 20 years and they never get that FAA certification. And there are plans for that. I think what it would come down to is getting awareness sent down to the service members when they're young in their career, in the midst of it. And let's go back to what Bill and Tom were talking about is the mentors. Have a mentor push to that service member when they're still in the service, so an outreach, and get them working on these things while they're still in, so it's an easier translation. Because I think that's what it comes down to. It's not capability, it's the translation.
Um, I agree with you, Roy, but I do think that I'm going to disagree a little bit because what in my experience and with veterans and military affiliated families and so forth is that you guys want to take on all the accountability, right? I'm going to push back on that a little bit, and I think higher ed and workforce and state need to take on some of this accountability too and understand a little bit where you guys are coming from. You guys are trying to fix the system in which you've had the most control. If you could give some advice to when you're applying for college or when you are putting in your joint service transcripts or your previous college courses, or Andrew puts in all of his certifications and puts that package together, what would you like to see happen from the higher ed? If they were the accountable party, what would you like to see happen?
I would say throw away the cookie cutters.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Experiences are unique. In applications, hiring managers, the admissions councils, the registrars, they know what they're used to seeing. And I don't fault them at that, but to not look at something that doesn't look like that, what they're used to doesn't mean that it doesn't fit in that same realm.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's probably some knowledge and processes and um understanding. I mean, we call it a crosswalk in higher ed. I think we need to look into that crosswalk from
Can I
both
add a couple
sides.
of thoughts? Can I add a couple of thoughts here, Kelly?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
gonna, yep, at about 2 till, I'll make sure that we'll finish up all
Okay.
the.
So really quick,
questions.
I think these have been all good comments about how we do that crosswalk, but at the end of the day, I think sometimes we have the wrong people involved. We've got the veterans, we got the Department of Defense, we got the VA, that's all great. The people, those are people representing where veterans have come from. The employers have the jobs. Employers need to be part of this discussion in a meaningful way. You know, the two key questions that get asked at every hiring thing is, who can do the job I need done and fit well on the team? What are the qualifications I need for the job? I think employers, employer associations, professional networking groups, and so forth need to be a bigger part of the discussion if you really want to tap in to veteran hiring and employment and help reduce the pressure on that war for talent that you fight every day. The other part of it relative to Roy is workload is huge. I've run recruiting departments, and you know, the workload with people, the natural tendency is to go with what's familiar. So asking people to go, hey, just try something new, it's great. However, the practical reality is that these are busy people doing busy things, juggling a lot of balls. The appetite to do new things is going to take some encouragement. And that's all got a root, in my mind, in the business case. What is the business case? What is the business problem we're trying to solve? And how do we incentivize those folks that are gatekeepers, if you will, to veterans entering our workforce? So I get really passionate about this stuff. All good. Oh, and education, relative to that, get the accrediting agencies involved. I don't know what they all are, but if you want to get involved in the education and credentialing for experience, that's going to have to go before their accrediting boards. So figure out who those are and get them in the discussion too.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Bill, because we here at TPMA, that is something that I'm thankful to be a part of a firm that allows us to look at issues and wanting to provide those solutions, and having the subject matter experts here on the bench and being able to have these webinars to bring light to that. So I want to thank TPMA for this webinar. I want to thank each one of our panelists. So Roy, thank you. Tom, Bill, Andrew, you guys took time out of your day today. I know you guys are probably either helping in the community, volunteering your time, crane operating, driving big trucks, right? Taking hits from LinkedIn, right? Fighting fires out there. Tom, I see you correcting people on a regular basis and transitioning. Bill, writing books and, you know, just training all the way around. I think I got 4 of the hardest working people in one place for an hour. So I am thankful for that. I do want to say that we're going to have one last webinar on August 28th. And I think what it's going to come down to for that webinar is how are we veteran ready? And Tom, you'll love this. How do we get to veteran preferred? How does our communities, our employers, our state, how does this all come to be a funnel to really showcase the ROI that a veteran and their family brings, but also make it fulfilling for them that they want to choose this life in our community. So final thoughts before I close out. I appreciate you all.
Kelly, I want to thank you because you have been such an advocate for everybody across the board, and none of this would come together if we didn't have you or people like you that we're willing to do the extra work and go the extra mile. So as much as you appreciate us being here, don't even think twice. Whatever I can do to support you, I'm just happy to be part of everything that you're involved with.
Thank you, Tom. That
Yeah, 100%. You know, TPMA, Kelly, the work you and your colleagues are doing is filling an important gap in closing that culture bridge between. Okay, so being an advocate for bringing everybody together to help solve real problems for people and organization. Bingo, kudos, congratulations, and whatever you need, I'm here to help.
Thank you.